Calder Hayes had ridden the mesas many times before, but today the wind carried a restless chill that seemed to whisper warnings he could not understand. The late afternoon sun burned low, casting long, jagged shadows across the red rocks. Calder's horse, a strong bay stallion named Copper, picked its way carefully over the uneven terrain, hooves crunching against dry sandstone. He had been traveling to trade horses with a neighboring ranch, a simple errand that should have taken only a day. Yet the sudden dust storm that had erupted out of nowhere forced him to seek shelter, and in doing so, he lost his sense of direction. The storm howled like a pack of wolves, whirling the sand and grit into sharp gusts that stung his skin. Visibility dropped to mere feet, and Calder's throat burned with the dust he inhaled. His eyes scanned the horizon desperately, searching for even a single landmark that could guide him back to familiar territory. That's when he spotted it. A narrow canyon partially shielded from the storm by sheer cliffs. Relief washed over him, and he urged Copper toward it, hoping to find some semblance of safety. As he descended, the air grew cooler and strangely fragrant, a sharp contrast to the dry, choking dust outside. A narrow stream glimmered in the dim light, fed by a spring hidden deep in the canyon. Copper's hooves splashed gently through the shallow water as Calder led him forward, feeling a cautious sense of calm descend. But there was another presence, a sudden, almost imperceptible shift in the air, a movement that made Calder freeze. Then he saw her. She emerged from behind a cluster of boulders, a figure shaped by grace and raw power, her skin glistening under the faint sun that filtered through the canyon walls. Her dark hair fell in loose waves, damp and clinging to her shoulders. Calder's heart skipped, his gaze locked on the figure before him. She was bathing her horse in the spring, utterly unaware of the outside world, her form exposed in the most sacred intimacy with nature. Calder's mind screamed to look away, to retreat, but he was rooted in shock and awe. Suddenly the woman's head turned. Dark eyes, sharp and unyielding, locked onto his. In that instant, Calder understood he had crossed a boundary he had no right to cross. The woman raised a spear, its tip gleaming in the filtered light, and her stance was rigid, perfect, and threatening. Every muscle in Calder's body tensed. "You!" she barked, her voice slicing through the canyon like a blade. "Who are you, and why do you spy upon me?" I didn't mean to," Calder stammered, raising his hands instinctively. "I was caught in the storm. I was just seeking shelter. I swear, I didn't see you on purpose." The woman studied him for a long moment, her eyes narrowing. The silence was deafening, filled with the rush of the spring and the distant wail of the storm outside. Then she spoke, her voice carrying authority Calder had never heard before. "You saw me ride naked. By my people's law, you belong to me." Calder froze. The words were incomprehensible, yet terrifyingly final. His mind scrambled for logic, for some explanation, for a way to undo what had already happened, but he knew, deep down, that this was no ordinary law he had accidentally violated. The woman's spear didn't waver. Copper shifted nervously under him, sensing the tension. Calder realized he could not simply flee. Even attempting to run would be seen as an admission of guilt, and the woman's people, whatever tribe they were, would not forgive it. His only choice was to submit, at least temporarily, to her command, and pray that he might survive long enough to understand what he had walked into. As the wind continued to howl outside, Calder lowered his gaze, his mind racing with questions. Who was she? What kind of law demanded such a thing? And most importantly, how could he navigate a world he had stumbled into entirely by accident? A world that now claimed him before he even understood its rules. The canyon seemed to close in, around him, and in that moment, Calder Hayes realized that his ordinary life, the one of ranches, trade, and simple routines, was over. He had crossed into a world of ancient laws, unyielding traditions, and a woman whose gaze could command his fate. And whether he liked it or not, he was now bound to her. Calder's mind raced as he stood in the canyon, the spring's cool water trickling past his boots. Nio, her name he didn't yet know, kept her spear poised, her dark eyes unblinking. She was a figure carved from the land itself, strong, untamed, and untouchable. Calder wanted to speak, to reason, to apologize, but he could feel, deep in his chest, that this was not a moment for words. This was a moment for law. "You do not understand," Neo said, her voice calm now, though every syllable carried weight. "The law of my people is older than these rocks. It is older than any storm. And you have broken it." Calder swallowed hard, trying to steady himself. "I swear I didn't mean to." She raised a hand, cutting him off. "Intent does not matter. Seeing me naked as I ride the spring, it is a violation of the spirits. It is a binding. And now, by the law, you belong to me." Calder's stomach twisted. "Belong to you? What does that even mean?" Neo's eyes softened fractionally, though her stance did not change. "It means what it always means. You cannot leave. You cannot defy the tribe's judgment. You are here until I decide your fate. And until then, you will serve." Serve. The word echoed in Calder's mind like a drumbeat. He had always been a free man, riding the mesas with copper, answering only to the work he chose and the land he owned. And now, by accident, he was trapped, ensnared by a law older than he could comprehend, bound to a woman he had barely met. I'm not a prisoner," he said, trying to mask his fear with defiance. "I'm just a traveler. I meant no harm." "You are already judged," Neo replied. Her voice was low now, a subtle warning beneath the authority. "Your intention does not erase what has been done. The spirits demand balance, and in our ways, you are the debt to be repaid. You will follow me, or there will be consequences you cannot imagine." Calder looked around the canyon, calculating the distance, the steep walls, the narrow escape routes. He realized running would be suicide. The woman was not merely a single guardian. She was a warrior of her people, and if she wanted him, she would have him. Resisting was not only foolish, it was dangerous. Neo gestured toward the narrow path that led deeper into the canyon. "Come, the council must see you. They will decide how you will serve if you survive the judgment." Calder hesitated. Pride screamed at him to refuse, to stand his ground, but reason, survival instinct, and the undeniable power in her gaze forced him to step forward. He followed, copper obedient but tense, ears swiveling at every sound. Each step into the canyon felt like stepping further into a world he did not belong to, a world with rules he could not yet understand, and a woman who commanded him with a single glance. As they walked, Neo's gaze never left him. "Do not think that fear will help you," she said. "Do not think that cleverness will save you. Only obedience and respect will allow you to survive what comes next." Calder swallowed again. He felt both trapped and exhilarated. Something about the authority in her voice, the confidence in her stride, stirred a respect he had never known he could feel for another human being. He had seen leaders, men of influence, and he had never been intimidated like this. Neo was not merely enforcing law, she embodied it, as if the spirits themselves had chosen her to carry their will. The canyon narrowed further, walls rising like the walls of a cathedral, echoing with the whisper of the spring. In the distance, Calder could see the flicker of firelight. Beyond that, the silhouettes of the Windriders' dwellings, the council's meeting place, appeared. And for the first time, Calder understood fully. He was not merely a visitor here. He was a man whose life, by ancient law, had been placed into the hands of a woman he barely knew. And the question that now burned in his chest, hotter than fear, hotter than confusion, was the one that would define every step he took next. Would he survive the law and the woman who wielded it? Calder followed Neo through the twisting paths of the canyon, his senses heightened with each step. The air here was different, cooler, scented with cedar smoke and damp earth. The narrow trail opened into a clearing where the Windriders' council gathered, a semicircle of men and women seated around a roaring fire. The glow illuminated faces carved by wind and sun, eyes sharp and watchful. Each face regarded him with a mixture of suspicion, curiosity, and authority. Neo led him to the center of the clearing. "These are the elders and warriors of my people," she said, her voice steady, almost ceremonial. "By our law you have entered sacred ground unbidden. You have seen what should never be seen, and now the council must decide your fate." Calder's heart hammered in his chest. He had expected harsh punishment, but he had not expected this. An entire tribe staring at him, the weight of judgment pressing down like the canyon walls themselves. He took a tentative step forward, keeping his gaze lowered, hoping that humility might temper the council's anger. An elderly man with a long white beard and eyes like polished obsidian spoke first. "This one is trespassing, yes, but intent matters not, as you have seen. The spirit's laws are clear. Witnessing a warrior in the sacred bath binds the witness's fate to the one seen. The law is older than any tribe, older than any man." Another elder, a woman whose arms were adorned with intricate tattoos of horses and wind, leaned forward. "He has strength and skill," she said. "Our herds suffer. Perhaps his knowledge may benefit the tribe. Let him not be killed, but let him serve. Let his debt be repaid with labor, with guidance from the warrior whose privacy he violated." Neo's gaze softened just slightly, but her stance remained commanding. "The law gives me the choice. I can demand punishment or I can demand his service. I have chosen service so that he may live, and so that the spirits may be appeased." Calder exhaled shakily. Service. It was both relief and humiliation. He had expected death or at least imprisonment. Instead, he would live, but bound not by chains but by law, and by a woman whose power he could barely comprehend. A younger warrior stepped forward, skepticism written on his face. "What if he refuses? What if he tries to flee?" he demanded. "Does he not risk angering the spirits further?" Neo's eyes snapped to him, sharp as her spear. "Then he suffers the consequences. The law is clear, but I do not expect it will be necessary. He knows he cannot escape the canyon, cannot escape the tribe, cannot escape me. The choice is his. Obey or face the spirit's judgment." Calder's throat was dry. He nodded slowly, knowing that any defiance would be fatal, not just to him but to the fragile trust forming in this circle of eyes. I will obey," he said, voice barely more than a whisper. The council murmured among themselves, debating the subtleties of his words, the tone of his voice, his posture, his eyes. Finally, the elder with the white beard spoke again. "Let it be known. He will serve under the guidance of the warrior whose law binds him. Let his actions from this day forth determine his fate, for the spirits watch, and they are unforgiving." Neo gestured for Calder to kneel. "You will remain close to me," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "You will learn the ways of our people. You will work the herds, assist the tribe, and honor the laws you have broken. Only then may you earn freedom, or something approaching it." Calder knelt, his hands brushing the warm dirt, feeling the enormity of his situation settle over him like a stone. He had crossed into a world he did not understand, into a culture ancient and unforgiving. And yet in the depths of that fear, a strange spark flickered. Curiosity, respect, even awe. As the council dispersed, the firelight dancing across their faces, Calder met Neo's eyes. In that glance he felt both the weight of his bond and a spark of connection he could not explain. The law had chosen her to command him, and he had no choice but to follow. But even in obedience, something new was beginning, something dangerous, intoxicating and utterly unavoidable. The next morning, Calder woke to the smell of smoke and the soft sounds of horses stirring in their corrals. For the first time, he felt the full weight of his situation. He was not a visitor here. He was not simply a trespasser who might be escorted out. He was bound by law, tethered to Neo, and his every action would be scrutinized. Neo was already awake, tending to her horse with precise, practiced motions. She glanced at him briefly, noting the tension in his shoulders, the unease in his eyes. "Today you begin your service," she said. Her tone was flat, commanding, and it left no room for argument. "Follow me, do as I say, and you will survive. Fail, and the law has consequences you will not like." Calder nodded, swallowing hard. Pride and fear warred within him. He wanted to argue, to resist, but he knew that resistance here would be more than foolish, it would be deadly. So he followed, stepping carefully across the uneven canyon floor, Copper at his side, mirroring his unease. Their first tasks were simple yet grueling. Calder helped prepare feed for the horses, mended fences, and assisted with the early morning chores that kept the Wind Rider's small herd alive. He was clumsy at first, unfamiliar with the methods, and Neo did not hide her impatience. "No," she said sharply, correcting his stance as he tried to lift a bundle of hay. "Your back straight. Your arms steady. The horse feels your hesitation. Learn to move with confidence or you will be useless to the tribe." Despite the harshness, Calder felt an odd fascination with her. Neo moved with a fluid precision that made every motion look effortless, yet he knew it was discipline and years of training. There was power in her, raw and commanding, and Calder felt an undeniable pull toward it even as fear kept him cautious. By midday, Calder had learned more than he expected. Neo showed him how to read the horse's subtle signals, how to anticipate their movements, and how to establish trust without force. Each lesson came with a sharp word or a stern glance, and Calder felt himself becoming attuned not only to the animals, but to Neo herself. Her presence was magnetic, impossible to ignore, and he realized with a flush of embarrassment that he was studying her movements as much as the horses. "You are distracted," Neo said suddenly, her dark eyes catching his gaze. Calder froze. "Do not let your thoughts wander. The horses will sense it. The law will sense it. Focus or you will fail." He bowed his head, chastened, but the warning only made his awareness sharper. He was drawn to her, yes, but he was learning discipline too. Every correction, every moment of guidance, strengthened a bond he had not consented to but could not deny. By evening, Calder's muscles ached. But there was a sense of accomplishment he had never felt in his simple ranching life. He had survived the first full day of service, obeyed the law, and begun to understand the rhythms of this new world. And though he would never admit it aloud, he felt a grudging respect for Neo, tempered with a dangerous curiosity about the woman who held his fate in her hands. That night, as the fire crackled in the clearing and the other tribe members settled around their own tasks, Calder found himself alone with Neo for a brief moment. She stood at the edge of the firelight, silhouetted against the canyon walls, and spoke softly, almost as if testing the boundaries of their forced bond. "You are learning quickly," she said. "Do not mistake survival for freedom. You obey now because you must, but do not think the law is finished with you." Calder nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He was her captive, bound by law, yet something unspoken passed between them, a tension, a curiosity, a spark that neither could deny. For Calder, the first day of service had begun as fear, then became labor, and ended with a realization he could not ignore. He was no longer just a man caught in a law he did not understand. He was becoming part of a bond, forced though it might be, that would test his patience, his courage, and perhaps even his heart. The days passed in a rhythm that Calder had never known. Sunrise brought the chores of the herd, midday brought lessons in tracking, hunting, and survival, and evening brought the council fires where stories, rules, and traditions intertwined like smoke and shadows. The canyon had become a world unto itself, one governed by laws Calder did not fully understand, and one ruled by a woman whose presence both challenged and fascinated him. Calder had begun to adapt, learning the ways of the horses, the nuances of the terrain, and the subtle signals of the tribe. Yet with each passing day, friction with Neo intensified. Their personalities clashed as often as they aligned. Calder was practical, impatient, and used to control, accustomed to solving problems with hands and logic. Neo was disciplined, intuitive, and unyielding, attuned to the rhythms of the land and the spirits, often valuing tradition over efficiency. "You are rushing again," Neo said sharply one afternoon as Calder attempted to coax a young stallion into following his lead. The horse backed away, sensing hesitation. "Control your fear, control your doubt." "Do you wish to fail?" Calder's jaw tightened. "I'm not afraid," he said, though even he could feel the tremor of nerves beneath his words. I have a different way of doing things." Neo's eyes narrowed, dark and piercing. "Your way is not the way of the Wind Riders. The horse will not obey your logic, only your understanding. If you cannot learn this, you will be useless to me, and to yourself." Frustration flared in Calder. He had been skilled with horses all his life, yet here his usual methods failed. He was trapped between his instincts and her authority, and he hated the dependence it forced upon him. Yet at the same time, he couldn't deny the effectiveness of her techniques, the subtle harmony she created with the animals. Calder realized with a sting of humility that he had never truly known control. It was always just mastery over what submitted, not understanding of what lived and breathed. They worked in tense silence for hours, neither yielding, neither speaking unless necessary, yet beneath the tension simmered a current of something unspoken. Calder couldn't stop noticing the strength in her shoulders, the fluidity of her movements, the way her voice carried authority without cruelty. Nyo, for her part, observed him with scrutiny, noting the flashes of stubbornness, courage, and determination beneath his frustration. That evening, during the council's gathering around the fire, their differences became more apparent. Calder, accustomed to rational discussion and compromise, found himself frustrated by traditions that seemed arbitrary and rules that seemed harsh. Nyo, seeing his resistance, could not help but challenge him further. "You think you can bend the world to your will?" she said quietly, so that only he could hear. "Here you must bend yourself to the world. Only then will you survive." Calder looked at her, the firelight flickering across her face, illuminating her sharp features and intense gaze. For the first time, he felt a mix of defiance and admiration, a recognition that she was not merely enforcing law or tradition, but shaping him, forcing him to confront his own limitations. "You think you're teaching me?" he said, voice low but steady. "But I am learning, Neo. Perhaps more than you know." Her lips curved faintly, almost a smile. "We shall see," she replied. As the night deepened, Calder realized that their clashes were more than simple arguments. They were tests, explorations of strength, patience, and understanding. In each disagreement, each frustration, there was a spark that neither of them could fully control. Mutual respect growing beneath layers of tension, and something more delicate, more dangerous, beginning to take root. By the time the fire burned low, Calder knew two things. 1. Survival in this world required obedience, humility, and respect for laws older than his own understanding. 2. He was drawn to Neo in a way that terrified and exhilarated him, a bond forged not by choice but by fate, and now, by the law she wielded. In the quiet of the canyon night, Calder lay beneath the stars, listening to the distant rustle of horses and the faint whisper of wind. He realized that the law that bound him to Neo was not merely a cage, it was a doorway, a challenge, and perhaps, if he survived it, a path to something neither of them had anticipated, a connection that would redefine both their lives. The morning sun rose over the canyon, golden light spilling across the mesas and illuminating the Windriders' camp. Calder had learned to rise early, his body attuned now to the rhythms of the tribe, yet sleep brought little comfort. His dreams were restless, filled with swirling dust storms, thundering hooves, and the unyielding gaze of Neo. The uneasy calm of the morning was shattered when a scout returned from the northern ridge, dust-streaked and breathless. "Raiders," he announced, voice tight with urgency. "A rival tribe, the Red Talons, they are coming for our horses. They have crossed the canyon and will be upon us by nightfall." A murmur ran through the camp. Horses neighed and stamped in agitation, sensing the tension of their humans. Calder's heart sank. He knew the Windriders were skilled, but he also knew that even the strongest herds could be overpowered if caught unprepared. Neo moved immediately, her voice cutting through the panic. "Everyone to your stations. Protect the herd. Stay in formation. Calder, come with me. You will ride with me. Do not falter." Calder mounted Copper, muscles coiling with adrenaline. He had trained under Neo's guidance, learned her methods and followed her rules, yet fear still churned in his stomach. He had never faced an enemy beyond wild animals, and now the stakes were life and death. As they rode out to meet the threat, Neo's hand brushed Calder's arm briefly, a subtle reminder that he must trust her completely. Calder's pulse quickened, but he did not pull away. He could feel the weight of her presence beside him, commanding, fearless, and impossible to ignore. They reached the northern ridge just as the first signs of the Red Talons appeared, dust clouds rising, the glint of weapons and the pounding of hooves. Calder's training kicked in. He positioned Copper carefully, mirroring Neo's movements, learning to anticipate not only the horses but her instincts. The attack came swift and brutal. Raiders charged, shouting war cries, trying to scatter the Windriders' herd. Calder and Neo moved as one, blocking, guiding, and redirecting the animals. Calder saved a young mare from panicked flight, guiding her back into the protective circle of the tribe. Neo saw him and gave a brief nod, and in that instant Calder realized something profound. She trusted him. The battle was chaotic, each moment demanding split-second decisions. Calder's heart pounded, sweat stinging his eyes as he followed Neo's lead. At one critical moment, a red talon warrior lunged toward her. Calder's instincts overrode fear. He spurred Copper forward and intercepted the attacker, knocking him off balance and saving Neo from a potentially deadly strike. She caught her breath, eyes wide, then allowed a rare flash of gratitude. "You have courage," she said, voice steady despite the chaos. "Do not think I did not see it. The law did not bind you to bravery. You chose it yourself." The red talons were eventually driven back, scattered by the combined skill and coordination of the Wind Riders. As the dust settled, Calder felt exhaustion in every muscle, yet a fierce satisfaction burned in him. He had survived, contributed, and, most importantly, proven himself under the eyes of Neo and her people. That evening, as the camp tended to the wounded and the horses calmed, Neo approached Calder. Her eyes were intense, a mix of caution and something more complex. "You have strength," she said softly. "Not just in your arms, but in your heart. You have done well today. Perhaps the spirits are testing you, or perhaps they are guiding you towards something neither of us fully understands." Calder nodded, catching his breath, feeling a swell of pride and something he could not name. A bond forming not through law or duty alone, but through shared danger, mutual respect, and a trust that neither had expected. For the first time, he realized that surviving the law was only part of the challenge. The other part, perhaps the far greater one, was navigating the unspoken connection growing between him and Neo. And as the canyon settled into a tense calm under the rising moon, Calder knew that the coming days would test him in ways even the fiercest raid could not. The aftermath of the raid left the Wind Riders' camp tense but alive. Horses were secured, injuries tended, and the scarred land slowly returned to quiet. Yet within the canyon there was a different tension, one that was quieter, more intimate, and far more dangerous than the clash of warriors. Calder's place among the tribe had changed. He was no longer just a captive. He was a contributor, a protector, someone who had proven his courage under fire. That evening, as the camp gathered around a large fire to recount the day's events, Calder found himself at the edge of the circle, his attention drawn repeatedly to Neo. She sat across the fire, dark eyes reflecting the flames, her expression calm but unreadable. Every movement she made carried authority, yet there was a subtle softness almost imperceptible directed toward him. Calder felt the pull of her gaze, the unspoken acknowledgement of his deeds during the raid. A messenger arrived unexpectedly, carrying news from beyond the canyon. Calder's family, worried and armed, had come to retrieve him. The knowledge hit him like a bolt of lightning. His past life, the ranch, his freedom, the world he had always known was at the edge of his reach. And now, he faced a choice that would define not only his future but the fragile bond forming between him and Neo. The council convened quietly around the fire, the elders' faces illuminated by the flickering flames. They were silent at first, letting Calder consider his decision, letting the weight of the law settle in his chest. Neo remained seated beside him, close enough that he could sense the warmth radiating from her, yet distant enough to remind him of the law that bound him. Calder spoke first, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "I've been offered a chance to return. To my home, my family." His words trailed, the unspoken question hanging heavy in the air. "But I've learned much here. I've seen your people your way, and I've come to respect it." The elder with the white beard nodded, acknowledging his words. "Respect alone does not make a choice," he said. "You must decide where your life will go and where your heart resides." The spirits watch. Calder turned his gaze to Neo, whose dark eyes met his without hesitation. In them, he saw not only the authority of the law but something far more personal. Recognition, trust, and perhaps even the hint of something deeper. His heart pounded as he realized the truth he could no longer deny. He belonged here, not merely by law but by choice. "I choose to stay," Calder said finally, his voice firm. "I choose to stay with you, with your people. Not because I am forced, but because I want to. Because my place is here." A hush fell over the council. Neo's eyes softened slightly, a subtle acknowledgement of the gravity of his choice. The tension that had gripped the canyon for weeks seemed to release in a collective exhale. Calder had proven himself worthy, not only in courage but in heart. Neo stood walking to him with the quiet grace of someone who commanded both respect and attention. She placed her hand briefly on his shoulder, a gesture that carried authority, approval, and a spark of intimacy he could not ignore. "Then the law binds you no longer as a punishment," she said. "It binds you as a partner, as one who has chosen to walk beside me willingly. You have survived the test of courage and the test of heart. Now the true journey begins." Calder felt a mixture of relief and exhilaration. He had faced death in the raid, endured the strictures of ancient law, and now, by choice, he was stepping into a new life, a life where danger, duty, and desire intertwined. Neo's presence was no longer a source of fear, but of connection, challenge, and possibility. That night, as the fire burned low and the canyon settled into silence, Calder and Neo stood at the edge of the camp, looking out over the mesas bathed in moonlight. The law had brought them together, danger had tested them, and now choice had sealed their bond. And as the wind whispered through the canyon, Calder understood something profound. Life among the Wind Riders would never be simple, but it was a life he was willing to fight for, and a woman he was willing to follow, wherever the law, the land, or the heart might lead. The canyon had settled into a rare, peaceful stillness. The chaos of the raid was behind them. The council had acknowledged Calder's choice, and the tribe moved with its quiet, practiced rhythm. Yet for Calder there was no peace, only the lingering weight of unspoken emotions and the pull of something more profound than mere survival. Night fell, and the sky above the canyon erupted in a tapestry of stars. Calder sat by a dying fire, the scent of cedar smoke curling into the crisp night air. Copper grazed nearby, sensing the tension in his rider, the way his gaze kept drifting toward the shadows where Neo had gone moments before. He had learned to follow her commands, anticipate her movements, and trust her instincts. But he had not learned to interpret the quiet moments between words, the unspoken currents of their bond. Then she appeared. Neo moved silently across the canyon floor, her silhouette outlined against the shimmering firelight. She sat beside him without invitation, her presence commanding yet calm, as if the stars themselves had guided her there. Calder's chest tightened. The law had bound him to her once, but now he knew the bond was no longer only legal. It was personal, inescapable, and undeniable. They sat together in silence, the crackling fire a faint accompaniment to the symphony of cicadas and the whisper of the wind. Finally Neo spoke, her voice softer than he had ever heard. "You have chosen your path," she said, looking up at the constellations. "You did not have to stay. You were offered freedom, and yet you remained. Why?" Calder swallowed, his heart hammering. He could not hide the truth, not from her, not here. "I stayed," he said quietly, "because I—" He paused, searching for words that would not betray too much, yet express what burned in his chest. "Because I care. About this place. About your people. About you." Neo's eyes met his, wide and unflinching. For the first time, she let the armor of authority slip just enough for vulnerability to show. "You care?" she repeated, a whisper that trembled between wonder and caution. "Even knowing the law, knowing the danger?" "Yes," Calder admitted. "I don't fully understand your ways, and I'm not yet the man I want to be here. But I cannot deny it, I care for you. More than I should, maybe. More than I ever thought I could care for anyone." For a long moment the canyon seemed to hold its breath. Neo's gaze softened, the sharp edges of command blurring into something warmer, more human. "The law brought you to me," she said, "but the law did not bind your heart. That choice, that is yours and yours alone. And yet—" She hesitated, biting the corner of her lip, an uncharacteristic flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "Perhaps the spirits guided your heart as well as your body." Calder reached out, hesitating only for the briefest moment before letting his hand hover near hers. It was not a touch, not yet, but an acknowledgement, a bridge between fear, respect, and desire. Neo did not pull away. Instead, she allowed it, a silent confirmation that the bond they shared was no longer merely circumstantial or forced. It was mutual, fragile, and electric. "I never thought," she said softly, "that the law would bring me this. Someone who could meet me, not just follow, but challenge and yet stay. I did not expect to trust, to feel, to care." Calder's heart ached at the honesty in her words. "Neither did I," he admitted. "But I am glad of it, because whatever comes next, I want to face it with you." They sat together, the canyon stretching endlessly around them, and for the first time the law, the ancient, unyielding law that had bound them, felt less like a cage and more like the beginning of something neither had anticipated. A connection forged by fate, tempered by challenge and chosen by heart. Above them, the stars continued their silent vigil, witnesses to a confession that would change the course of both their lives. And as the fire's glow faded into embers, Calder and Neo finally allowed themselves to simply be together, two souls drawn by circumstance, courage, and the fragile, undeniable power of love. The first light of dawn painted the canyon walls with shades of gold and crimson, but Calder felt no warmth. His thoughts churned like the dust storms that had first brought him to this place. Word had reached the Wind Riders that his family, armed, worried, and determined, was approaching the canyon to retrieve him. They would see him not as a man who had chosen his path, but as a son who had abandoned duty. Calder's heart pounded. He had spent weeks learning the ways of this tribe, earning the trust of Neo and her people, surviving the raid, and beginning to understand the unspoken currents between him and Neo. And now, at the cusp of all he had fought to build, the world he had known threatened to sweep him away. The camp stirred with tension. The elders gathered near the central fire, whispers passing between them like wind through the canyon. Neo approached Calder, her expression calm but her dark eyes burning with unspoken command. "They are coming," she said softly. "They will demand you return. You must choose." Calder swallowed hard. "I know," he admitted. "But He hesitated, words failing him. How could he explain that his loyalty, his courage, and even his heart now belonged to this land, to this tribe, to her? The sound of hooves echoed across the mesa, drawing near. Calder's family emerged from the rising dust, his father, a stern man with a weathered face, and his older brother, armed and bristling with authority. "Calder," his father called. "You've gone far enough. Come home with us." Calder took a deep breath. He could feel Neo at his side, a steady presence anchoring him in a world that had once seemed alien and now felt like home. He turned to her, searching her eyes for guidance, for permission, for strength. She nodded slightly, the faintest smile curving her lips, a silent assurance that whatever choice he made, she would honor it. Stepping forward, Calder addressed his family, voice firm and unwavering. "I cannot go with you," he said. "I have chosen to stay here with Neo, with her people. I am not here as a captive. I am here because I have found a place where I belong and a woman I care for deeply. My life is here now and I cannot abandon it." Shock rippled across his father's face. "You are abandoning your duty, your family, everything we've taught you," his brother shouted. Calder shook his head. "I am not abandoning anything," he said. "I am honoring what I've learned, what I've become, and what I care about. I am choosing a life of my own. I cannot undo what I have experienced here, nor would I want to." Neo stepped forward, her presence commanding yet tempered with calm authority. "The law bound him to me once," she said, her voice carrying across the canyon, steady and unwavering. "But he chose his path with courage, respect, and heart. He is not taken. He is here because he has earned his place and because he has chosen it freely." Calder's father opened his mouth, then closed it. The firelight reflected in his eyes, a mixture of disbelief and reluctant respect. The canyon held a tense silence, broken only by the soft rustling of the wind. Finally, Calder turned to Neo, heart pounding, voice barely more than a whisper. "I choose you," he said. "Not by law, not by obligation, but because I want to. Because I belong here. With you." Neo's eyes softened, and for the first time, Calder saw vulnerability mingle with strength. "And I choose you," she replied. "Not as a law demands, but as my heart wills it. We have survived the law, the danger, and the doubt. Now we choose each other." The canyon seemed to exhale with them, the wind carrying away the tension, leaving only the promise of a bond forged through challenge, courage, and mutual choice. Calder had faced the weight of family, the expectations of the world he left behind, and the fear of losing everything. And in choosing Neo, he embraced a new life, one where love, respect, and destiny intertwined. As the sun climbed higher, Calder and Neo mounted their horses together, riding across the mesa side by side. The tribe watched in quiet approval, and even Calder's family lingered at the canyon's edge, a mix of awe and grudging respect in their eyes. In that moment, Calder realized that freedom was not merely the absence of chains. It was the courage to choose, to commit, and to follow the heart, wherever it might lead, even into the unknown, even into the arms of a woman who had claimed him first by law, and then by something far stronger, love. The canyon awoke to the soft hum of morning, sunlight spilling across the red rock cliffs and warming the Windriders' camp. Birds stirred and the horses neighed in gentle greeting to the day. Yet for Calder and Neo, the dawn carried a significance beyond mere light. It was the beginning of a life forged not by accident, not by law alone, but by choice, trust, and love. The tribe had gathered near the central fire, forming a circle that symbolized unity, tradition, and continuity. Elders, warriors, and families of the Windriders stood together, their eyes filled with respect and quiet approval. Calder and Neo stood at the center, side by side, their horses calm beneath them. Every motion, every glance carried the weight of the journey that had led them here. The storm that brought Calder, the accidental violation of sacred law, the tests of courage, and the moments of intimacy under stars and firelight. Neo raised her hand, signaling silence, and the elders stepped forward. "By the law he was bound to me," she said, voice strong and clear. "By choice he has remained. By courage he has proven himself. By heart he has joined our tribe not as a captive, but as a partner, a protector, and a member of our family." Calder's gaze met hers, and in that silent exchange, words became unnecessary. Everything he had feared, everything he had learned, and everything he had felt over the past weeks converged into this single, profound moment. He was not bound by obligation. He was bound by trust, respect, and love. The eldest of the tribe, the man with the long white beard, stepped forward. "The spirits have tested you both," he said, voice carrying the weight of generations. "They have challenged courage, loyalty, and heart. Today they bear witness to your union. May the winds guide you, the land protect you, and the law of our people honor your choice." A hush fell over the canyon. Calder and Neo dismounted, walking together to the center of the circle. Neo extended her hand, and Calder took it without hesitation. Their fingers intertwined, a simple yet profound gesture that bridged fear and respect, law and choice, survival and love. The tribe chanted softly, a rhythm of voices echoing through the canyon, and the air seemed to hum with energy. Horses stamped in quiet approval. The wind danced through the canyon walls, and the scent of cedar smoke filled the morning. Calder felt his heart swell, not from pride, not from relief, but from the recognition that he had found a place where he truly belonged. Neo's voice broke the chant for a final word. "This union is not merely for us," she said. "It is for the tribe, for the law, and for the spirits. Let it be known that courage, respect, and heart can guide even the most unexpected of journeys. Let the wind carry our bond, and let it be written across the canyon for all who follow." Calder drew a deep breath, feeling the weight and beauty of her words. "I choose you, Neo," he said, voice steady and filled with conviction. "Not because of law, not because of fear, but because my heart belongs here with you and with your people. I am yours as you are mine, by choice, by courage, and by the bond we have forged." Neo's dark eyes glimmered with emotion, and she smiled, the kind of smile reserved for moments of truth and recognition. "And I choose you," she replied. "By law once, and now forever by heart." The tribe erupted in quiet cheers and affirmations, a celebration that was both ritual and genuine joy. Calder and Neo embraced briefly, then mounted their horses side by side. They rode along the canyon's edge, wind whipping through their hair, hearts beating in unison, their bond visible to all who watched. The canyon itself seemed to respond, as if the land recognized the harmony of law, courage, and love coming together. In that moment, Calder realized that he had not only survived the law, he had transcended it. He had found freedom, belonging, and the woman who would share every sunrise and challenge to come. And as they rode into the vast, open expanse beyond the canyon, the Windriders trailing in respectful formation, the wind carried their laughter, their determination, and the undeniable truth, a union written not by accident, not by fear, but by the enduring power of choice. Art and destiny,